Our Prime Minister has some issues joining. Uh, Wait a minute.
I think we can wait for 2 more minutes, otherwise you will have to add a person. We're already 5 minutes past the stipulated starting time. So is everyone here now?
Yes,
Side
government.
Cup, I'll do the roll call again. Side Cup, are you here?
Yes, government team is here.
Side Op, are you here in entirety?
Yes.
Okay, panelists are here as you. With that, we'll start the introduction. Hello, my name is Anna. I'll be your chair for today. With me on the panel is
Hello everyone, Ron is here. I'll be the panelist for today.
Hello everyone, I'm Sarthak and I'll be panelist for the debate.
and that concludes the panel introductions. We'll be debating motion three, three. Yeah, we'll be debating motion three. With that, before we move on to the debate, just few ground rules: be respectful, attack the argument, not the person. With that being said, I call upon the PM to set with the case off. Thank you. Here, here.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Yan Shin, and I'm the PM from the Gov side. My voice is audible.
Yep, you're perfectly audible. Go ahead.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yes.
Before the, this is for the panel. Before the debate starts, can we have a timer shared?
Runner can accommodate for that, or if not, I can share. Or if any of the panelists wants to share, they can share as well.
It's
Um,
cool. So now I'll start.
do you not need a timer?
Is the timer visible to
Okay,
everyone?
cool. Sarthik is sharing. Thank you. Thanks, Sarthik. Yeah, the timer is visible. Sure.
So again, my name is Yan Shin. I'm the PM from the Gov side. Pronounce I hear him. And POI is whenever you feel like. No preferred time taps. And I'll be starting in. I can start now, basically, sir. I'll be
You
starting.
start whenever, I'll time it.
Huh? Yes.
Then give me a countdown.
Okay, okay. So I'll be starting in three, two, and one. Okay. So the motion reads that this house believes that modern feminism must shift focus to dismantling systemic barriers to achieve true gender equality. So first I'll be defining the status quo. So status quo. So what's the at present currently world looks like? The feminism, the term feminism or modern feminism at present is perceived as an ideology or a way to upholding or growing those women rights, particularly the feminism around the world is like the notion of feminism is believed as to uphold or generalize, to not generalize, to uphold or upbring those women rights, which has been through particular centuries or years been drowned by this patriarchy, these dominating males or those cultures or custom. So in this world the feminism term is at the status quo is ki notion wise it is not, it is think like that the feminism, but we as a government are proposing or are believing the thing that keep the modern feminism must shift focus to dismantling systemic barriers to achieve true gender equality. So stakeholders we are presenting as every individual and genders in every individual and every gender around the world, like basically the world at large is our stakeholders. So when we say that key modern feminism must shift focus to dismantling systemic barriers. So when I say that key, the currently the feminism is look like to see a notion basically to those women rights or those, if say like general, if say like few gender rights including also, but uh, that's not the way to, that's not the way to achieve the true gender equality notion. When I say that, I mean to define the systemic barriers within what in this motion mean. Like systemic barriers basically are those racism, casteism, those poverty, those disparities in the field of education, health, and infra, those rigid social expectations, those under representation in the politics, those unequal pay of wages, those gender based violence. So these are the examples of systemic barriers which in the world, which in currently every nation do feel do feel these kind of problems to do feel these kind of problems do are relevant with these systemic barriers. So when this feminism wave or when this feminism movement shift their burden, shift their ideology, or shift their thought process to overcome these systemic barriers, we as a government are saying that these systemic barriers are the core problems, or are the like most important problems to overcome to achieve those gender equality, true gender equality notion. So when I've said that ki systemic barriers are example of systemic barriers are these like racism, poverty, all these kind of things. So while like for an example, if this modern feminism movement target individually in these barriers. For example, if they target individually in this racism, casteism factor, by this by this if they target individually by this, they can achieve, or they can be over by they can achieve, or they can be conclude with the true gender equality. Now true gender equality in believing that all the genders, all the representatives, all the people around the world who think themselves at different genders, who basically think differently from from the generalized ideology. So by by acting or working upon the systemic barriers, they can achieve the simple notion. And when I say when we government are proposing that, we are also proposing to achieve the ultimate goal of equity. So when I say that equity, I am defining that keep promoting fairness while treating those people according to circumstances. So when this feminist movement treat people feminism movement work accordingly to achieve that goal of equity. So while achieving that goal of equity, they are ultimately achieving the goal of true gender equality. When they work in the basic part, when they work in an so when they work in individually or like targeting these barriers thing, they'll be getting or ultimately what oh, time is there na.
Ah, yeah, it's still running.
Ha, ha. So okay, so when every so when I said I was saying that key working upon this equity factor, they'll be achieving that gender equality thing. And moreover, what is true gender equality? When every gender stands on the same pitch, voices and demands of each gender is listened or actioned upon. Like we believe modern feminism is the belief in the equality of people of all genders. Modern feminism, as current notion, as the present thing, we believe that it is the way to achieve the equality of people of all the genders around, dismantling gender equalities and those structures. We are proposing that we are proposing the work of decomposing gender inequalities can be done through shifting our core focus on dismantling those systemic barriers. Now what are those barriers? I have in the earlier point I have mentioned those race, class, creed, poverty, and disparity. Why is it important to shift our burden or shift our focus on those systemic disparities? When like for example, in a poor like take example of India only. If I say that unequal pay of wages in a corporate sector, like in the corporate sector, unequal pay of wages, basically we have a notion that ki male or those men's are part of those high wages, or those comparing with those women or those other genders, they are basically treated with low wages thing. So when these movement when this modern feminism movement target or equal or like exactly targets or focus on this individual field or these barriers kind thing, they can achieve. Like if they if their movement shift their burden to this factor like unequal, like for example like unequal pay of wages, so they can like target, they can easily overcome to that inequality thing and lead to which may lead to equality if they shift their focus. But what at present is now the world looks like that modern feminism is just perceived as a way or an ideology of upholding individual, upholding that women rights only, or that or like to defy or to discourage those patriarchy thing. But if they shift their burden, it will be profitable for social cause at a society at large. It will be profitable and will be helpful for every gender around in the world. So at conclusion, I just want to say that ki when we believe ki modern feminism must, we repeat, must shift focus, we truly believe ki by shifting the focus to dismantling systemic barriers, they will be ultimately achieving in nearly few years that true gender equality thing. Systemic barriers in the world, systemic barriers are literally every country or every state faces these problems of revolving around the systemic barriers. And feminism is a notion which at present is at highest peak. So in its highest peak, the wave or that movement is at its highest peak. So when they shift their focus to when they shift their focus basically regarding the systemic barriers to these core problems, they will be ultimately achieving the true gender equality. uh, Thank you, that's all.
Thank you for that speech. Inviting Hello to comments side of
I'll just
here
take
here.
20 seconds.
Yeah, you have until 1 minute.
My preferred POI timing would be after 5 minutes 30 seconds, and I'll be starting in a self count of 3, 2, 1. So let me first pan. Let me first break the government's case for you. The PM says that we need to shift the focus to social causes, for which they fail to provide a proper framework of how the shift would be handled by the government. Mm, they say that equity is one of the important. If this movement comes into the form, equity would be one of the important things that would be tendered to by the movement itself. Then what is the government doing at first place? Isn't providing equity or equality the duty of the government? Now I'll go on with breaking the case for the opposition side. But before that, we need to understand what actually modern feminism looks like. Well, the PM did provide us with a hazy definition. I'll clear it out for you. Modern feminism is where feminism works hand in hand with drives against racism and sexuality. It is basically understanding how issues of gender, sex, and race are all interconnected. Uplifting the most marginalized group of the society is what modern feminism aims at. Now, for that, we need to know now what feminism actually is. Feminism is the belief that women must have the same rights and opportunities as men. To get a more clear idea, let's go back to the history. When did feminism arise? Feminism did arise when women, the female section of the society, wanted to be heard. They wanted to have a say in how the society works. And when did this arise? This took place in the society when patriarchy was at its peak, where women were literally oppressed. They didn't have any say even in their homely matters. Okay, now we need to know how the society looks in the history as well to understand this topic clearly. For that, we need to know that the society was not always patriarchal. It was matriarchal as well, where women ruled the society. Why do I come with that? I come with that point to understand that what systemic barriers actually are. Systemic barriers are barriers that are well existing in the system or in the society. Some of the examples as given by the PM was like they can be due to social and cultural beliefs and all disparity in pace. These are the systemic barriers. But why did they arise? Because somewhere, even in the matriarchal, I just mentioned, even in the matriarchal society, there were systemic barriers. Why were they? They were basically because we need to understand biologically a male and a female are working very differently. Recent studies itself say that the body of a female needs more rest than a male. And due to these causes, there was a pay disparity. which was obviously exaggerated, like it was increased um, exponentially during the patriarchal society. And that is where feminism goes. So, why do I give that much history to the panel? To understand what actually the motion means. Why we oppose the motion. We oppose the motion basically because right now feminism is somewhere taking a pseudo feminism, pseudo feminism form, where people without understanding the real cause and real meaning of feminism are asking for things. Now, the stakeholders, as defined by the PM, I'll continue with the same definition just to elaborate it further. Here, I'll be talking about biological two genders, that is biologically male and biologically female. Why? Just to understand how the body works, right? So in doing so, and the society at a large, of course. In doing so, one of the major important factors is during any when we wage some movement, many a times there are many people who join us, but they don't understand what we are actually fighting against. And when we talk about dismantling systemic barriers, the opposition does not say, I again clarify, does not say that it is not important. We are just saying that we need to understand which systemic barriers should be dismantled and which should not be dismantled. Putting everything against a systematic barrier is not correct. It's like it's somewhere harming the stakeholders at a large, which is not like which we cannot predict right now, or which the effect of which cannot be felt right now, but will have a very big effect in future. At this point, I would like to know if there are any POIs.
Yes, PY.
Yeah,
So when you are saying that every systemic barrier should not be targeted or like should be dealt with. So when I cite that ki gender-based violence is also part of systemic barrier.
yeah.
So how would you say like that gender-based violence or like gender-based healthcare inaccessibility, or these both are also the part of systemic barriers? So how would you basically deal with this? So like these problems should not be dealt with. You are
Thank
saying
you. I
that the
understood your question. You are taking a lot of time. So yeah. Now, when our worthy government comes up with this question, it's itself shows that they are again misinterpreting us, because I clearly mentioned not all. Systemic barriers need to be addressed, but not all. When you talk about equal hours of working, we need to understand a male working for 10 hours and a female working for 10 hours would have totally different impact on their biological systems. We need to get this straight. When you talk about dissolving all systemic barriers, you even talk about these points. Who is saying that we are not up for everybody getting equal health care? And that is what the government is for seeing that they get justice, but understanding that they both are different. In the under the umbrella of feminism, when we say that we need dismantling of systemic barriers, this is somewhere the government goes wrong, because they don't understand that all systemic barriers cannot be dissolved for the sake of the females, for the sake of different genders itself. And that is why I feel the opposition understands the burden properly and so proud to oppose.
Thank you for that speech. Inviting DPM to continue with his stuff. Here, here.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Abhay Kumar, Deputy Prime Minister of Gulf Side, and have no preferred time tabs, and my preferred pronouns are he and him, and ask POIs after 5 minutes. And I'm starting my arguments in three, two, and one. So, panel. First, we need to understand why to need, the need for shift in focus. Modern feminism must recognize that achieving true gender equality is impossible without addressing these systematic barriers head on. While raising awareness and changing cultural perceptions are important, they are insufficient without structural change. Panel policies must be enacted and enforced to ensure equal pay, reproductive rights, and protection against gender based violence, as stated by my Prime Minister. Educational curricula must be reformed to promote gender equality from a young age. Workplaces must implement policies that support gender diversity and inclusion at all levels. Uh, Panel further discussing about what is systematic barriers. Systematic barriers are, am I audible, panel? Hello.
Yes, you're audible. Please continue.
Fine. Systematic, first, opposition side need to understand, they lack to understand what is systematic barriers. Systematic barriers are deeply entrenched structures that disadvantage women and gender minorities. Uh, across various aspects of society. These barriers includes, you can say, these barriers includes, but are not limited to, discriminatory laws, biased educational systems, inequitable workplace practices, and pervasive cultural norms, as stated by my Prime Minister member. These are not isolated issues, but interconnected and widespread, uh, requiring a comprehensive and focused approach to dismantle panel. Uh, and if we talk about current realities, uh, first we need to understand historical context panel. Historically, feminism has evolved through various waves, each addressing different facets of gender inequality. The first wave focused on, you can say, legal inequalities like suffrage. The second wave tackle social and cultural issues such as reproductive rights and workplace discrimination. And thirdly, you can say the expanded the movement to include a broader spectrum of identities and experiences panel. However, despite these advancements, systematic barriers remain resilient. In many parts of the world, women still face legal restrictions, unequal pay, you can say limited access to education, and including gender-based violence too. Panel, these systematic issues are often compounded by intersecting factors like sexuality, class, race, creating a complex web of oppression. Panel that go side things requires a targeted and sustained effort to dismantle. And if we talk about, as stated by opposition leader of the opposition leader, she talked about pseudo feminism that is self contradictory. Panel that syst- as stated by the leader of opposition, that systematic barriers should not be removed at all. I think this is self contradictory term, they should uh, consider it as. And panel, if we talk about effective how to effectively dismantle systematic barriers, like in modern feminism, we should must adopt a multifaceted approach, like education and awareness. You can reform educational system to include comprehensive gender studies and promoting gender sensitive curricula which address biases from a young age. And if you uh, if we talk about addressing potential counter arguments panel, uh, opposition may argue that modern feminism is already addressing this issue, or that shifting focus might neglect cultural and social awareness. However, we contend that while progressing has been made, it's not enough. Systematic barriers require a concerted and focused effort to dismantle panel. Additionally, addressing systematic issues inherently raises cultural and social awareness as it is, challenges the status quo and promotes equality. And if we, uh, eh, I concluded my speech with modern feminism must prioritize dismantling systematic barriers to achieve true gender equality. This, as this is our motion too, this shift in focus is not only necessary but essential for creating a society where all individuals, regardless of gender, have equal opportunities and rights. Uh, we can do it by advocating for policy changes, reforming educational system, for promoting economic empowerment, and adopting an like intersectional approach. We can create lasting and meaningful change. Uh, we should affirm our commitment to the core mission of feminism, to dismantle the structure that perpetuate inequality and build a future where true gender equality is reality for all. Uh, Panel, summing up my uh, arguments in few seconds. Uh, First, like understanding systematic barriers. Second pointers, I give historical context and current realities. The need for shift in focus, and what strategic implementation can taken, like policy advocacy, education and awareness, empowerment by economic, intersectional approach. And I ending my arguments panel. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. Calling upon DLO to continue with case of here here.
Hi, I'll be giving the DLO speech, and I'll be taking the um, POIs after the after 5 minutes 30 seconds. So I'll be starting on a self count of 3, 2, 1, go. So, as discussed by the LO before, LO before about the biological factors. Even if we remove the biological factors, a total shifting to systematic barriers would take time and would somewhere shift the focus of feminism. That is providing them the self. Uh, can I would request the DPM to mute himself. Sorry. Would somewhere shift the focus of feminism, providing that is providing them self dependency, or being independent and be able to do their own jobs. Feminism coming to play one of the main cause is to driving force for males to prove themselves. If we totally change our focus to systematic barriers, the entire focus the feminism would focus the feminism's focus would be to break the system entirely, rather than being being able to work on themselves and be independent. Here we take an examples like as discussed by the LO before. Um, if they are if there would be working hours for two a male and female, uh, pay disparity. For example, in mines, we always do say that, like, we cannot make a woman and female and a male work for the same working hours. And I would like to address intersectionality. Modern feminism acknowledges that gender inequality is interconnected with other forms of discrimination, such as race, class, sexuality, and ability. Therefore, focusing solely on interpretations may not effectively address the systematic barriers. Um, just a second. Um, focus on material conditions. Modern feminism recognizes the importance of addressing the material conditions that perpetuate gender inequality, such as poverty, lack of access of healthcare, education, and resources. These issues may not be directly accessed through feminist interpretation. uh, Empowerment and agency. Feminism aims to empower individuals to challenge oppressive structures and exercise agency over their lives. Historical context. Feminist interpretation of religious texts often involve re-examining historical narratives and context to challenge patriarchal interpretation. However, focusing solely on reinterpretation may overlook broader historical and socio-political factors that contribute to gender inequality. Um, Modern feminism recognizes the interconnectedness of these issues and advocates for a multifaceted approach that addresses both religious interpretation and systematic inequalities simultaneously. Uh, in reality, modern feminism encompasses religious interpretation, a broad range of issues beyond religious interpretation, including systematic barriers, intersectionality, legal reforms, cultural norms, and global perspectives. Um, Empowerment. Global perspectives. Gender inequality manifests differently across cultures and regions, and feminism must adopt a global perspective that acknowledges diverse experiences and context. This includes advocating for the rights of women and marginalized genders worldwide, addressing global issues like gender based violence. Economic disparities and access to education and healthcare. Cultural and social norms. Feminism should challenge cultural and social norms that perpetuate gender inequality, including harmful stereotypes, restrictive gender roles, and attitudes that marginalize women and non binary individuals. This involves promoting cultural shifts and fostering inclusive attitudes that value diversity and gender equality. Legal and policy reforms. Achieving true gender equality requires advocating for legislative and policy changes such as equal pay laws, reproductive rights protection, anti-discrimination measures, and family-friendly policies. These reforms can have a significant impact on dismantling systematic barriers and promoting gender equality in society. Intersectionality. Gender inequality intersects with other forms of discrimination such as race, class, sexuality, and ability. Therefore, feminism should adopt an intersectional approach
why?
that recognizes and addresses the unique challenges faced by individuals at the intersection of multiple identities.
Why?
Structural inequality. A modern feminism must prioritize addressing systematic barriers entrenched within institutions like education, um, uh, like education, healthcare, employment, and law. Yes, the POI.
Uh, okay, so when I say that key systemic barriers also include underrepresentation in politics. So while politics are legislative or administrative way, those feminism, those movement, when a demand for their representation in politics can be achieved, can be able to achieve the good things or in the good way by having representation. So what you have a say in this regard?
Can you repeat the question? Actually, I'm sorry.
It's protective minute, so it's okay.
Yeah. So as you spoke about the political barriers on if we would be able to achieve the feminism in a good way. um, uh, like as I spoke earlier, if we implement a total shifting to systematic barrier, the world somewhere shift the focus of feminism, providing them, that is only to provide them independent provide themselves an independent life and being independent and do things according to their choices. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. Inviting GovWeb to conclude GovCase.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Go ahead.
My name is Mohammad Wasif Anwar, and I'm the government's whip. Uh, my preferred pronouns are he and him. And just give me 10 seconds. Start. Starting my speech in three, two, one. Good morning, everyone. Today, I stand before you as a government whip on the motion that this House believes that modern feminism must shift their focus to dismantling systematic barriers to achieve true gender equality. And I would begin my speech by reiterating some of the major points made by our side. We are economically empowering the modern feminists. Economic inequality is a significant systematic barrier. Women are disproportionately affected by poverty, wage gaps, and lack of economic opportunities. Modern feminism must prioritize policies and initiatives that promotes economic justice, such as equal pay legislation. Uh, you have not started the time, I can see. Such as equal pay legislation, paid family leave, affordable childcare, and support for women-owned businesses. We are also addressing the root causes of the systematic problems that the modern feminists face. We are focusing on dismantling systematic barriers because these are the root causes of gender inequality. Structural issues such as discriminatory laws, unequal pay, which my prime minister has said about, and a lack of access to education and healthcare creates persistent disparities. By targeting these foundational barriers, feminism can achieve more substantial and lasting progress. We are also promoting educational equity, and we are also promoting workplace equality. Now, some of the major clashes are that we one of the major clashes is the effectiveness of current approach. The opposition says that current feminist strategies are better and should be made that way. The government says that these strategies are insufficient. Systematic barriers must be dismantled to achieve true gender equality. And we are winning this clash because we have historical evidence for this. Major strides in gender equality, such as voting rights and anti discrimination laws, have been achieved through addressing systematic barriers. Uh, the syst- systematic approach tackles the structural issues that perpetuate inequality, leading to more comprehensive and lasting gender equality outcomes. There is a uh, also empirical evidence to support that countries with strong systematic policies, that is gender quotas and paid parental leaves, have better gender equality outcomes. Then there is a clash of systematic barrier versus individual issues. Opposition claims that feminism should focus on individual rights and personal empowerment. Why we say that dismantling systematic barriers is essential, and we are winning this debate because uh, uh, we are giving greater equality. Systematic reforms like equal pay legislation, comprehensive anti-harassment policy have a wider reach and promote equality more effectively than isolated success stories. We are also impact on one of the other classes on the impact of gender equality. Uh, current They say that current strategies are sufficient to achieve gender equality. We say that true gender equality can only be achieved by dismantling systematic barriers. We are winning this because we are bringing change on a macro level. Systematic reforms ensure that structural inequalities are dismantled, creating an environment where true gender inequality flourishes. We are bringing in long-term benefits. Systematic changes such as policy reforms, bring lasting benefits and protection that individual empowerment cannot achieve alone. Also, there is the uh, uh, wait uh, uh, on well by targeting systematic barriers, we create uh, by targeting systematic barriers, we create widespread and deep rooted changes that affect the entire system, leading to a more equitable society. Uh, uh, we are winning this debate because systematic changes has a broader and more profound impact compared to the isolated successes that the opposition's case brings. We are also bringing about inclusivity in our society. We are addressing marginalized groups. Systematic reforms inherently include and benefit marginalized groups such as LGBTQI and marginalized women by dismantling that the structures that perpetuate their disadvantage. This ensures that feminism is inclusive of all women, including those from minority and disadvantages background. Now, I would like to compare some points about the scope. Uh, we are bringing systematic change which which targets the root causes of gender inequality by addressing structural and institutional barriers. This has a broad impact, and the opposition, well, they don't really show why they are winning this debate, because they haven't proven why the current framework is more is better. Well, we are also bringing comprehensive reach. Systematic change addresses the entire framework within which inequality exists, leading to broader societal impact. Individual empowerment, while important, is limited in scope and cannot be achieved, cannot bring widespread change. Uh, we are also bringing inclusivity, uh, and there's also the point of feasibility and sustainability. Uh, Government's approach is that systematic reforms create lasting changes by embedding gender equality into laws and institutional practices. There is historical evidence for this, and such as gender quotas in politics, leading to increased representation. This is how we win, because we systematic changes provide a stable foundation for gender equality that does not rely on continuous intervention. Historical precedents show that systematic reforms lead to enduring improvements. Uh, Now, I would like to summarize this debate by how we are winning this debate. We are in our world, there is more equality and equity. There is structural changes brings a more equitable society by addressing the root causes of inequalities. There are equal opportunities. Everyone, regardless of gender, race, and socio-economic status, has equal access to opportunities and resources. There is inclusive policies like where measures like gender quotas and anti-discrimination laws ensure that marginalized groups are not left behind. Uh, uh, Within there is I would like to conclude this speech by saying that our world promotes equality and equity through systematic barriers. We are ensuring sustainability and stability in the pursuit of gender equality. We are embracing inclusivity and diversity, and we are fostering economic and social prosperity through shared opportunities and resources. Proud to propose.
Thank you for the speech inviting Opweb to conclude their case. Here you are.
Am I audible?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I get the timer, please? Rather stopwatch. Thank you so much. So, good morning to one and all. Today, I, OpWhip, is going to speak about the topic that is in the opposition of the House believes that the modern feminism must shift focus to dismantling systematic barriers to achieve true gender equality. Firstly, I would like to say that what do you mean by systematic barrier? Well, that was a very hazy explanation from the government side, and the PM specially gave some examples about racism, poverty, caste, creed, then sexuality, and all. But I believe the basic definition of systematic barrier is that it is the barrier in the society, be it policy or something else like procedures and all, which refrain people from full-fledged participation. And there are often results which causes biasing, and promoting awareness of these biases and equipping individuals with tools to challenge them helps to tackle inequality. Now, what feminism is the equality of women that should have been there for the same rights and opportunities to be enjoyed just the same as the male gender. And now, what is modern feminism? Modern feminism deals with race, different kinds of gender, which is where women do exist, and sexuality. Now, summing it all together, like the PM said, that just a minute, yeah, treating people according to the situations. Well, in many households, women has to be the breadwinners because of the incapability of the men in their houses. These are the women who has to run their households irrespective of the caste, creed, like you were giving the examples. In this world, majority of the people are poor and many are underprivileged, and women are not less in number here. So, isn't the government going to provide a promising job to secure their households, to run their house, and to look after it? In this way, you're simply knifing yourself, let me say. Also, health disparities, like you gave example, health disparities and education, criminal justice, like the PM asked, when my LO was has to give the POI. Well, this is why the government is for. If you don't promise your citizens, you don't provide service to them properly, then what is the government for? Government is there for to provide equal treatment and service to all genders, irrespective of caste, creed, race, and gender. Now, like DPM said, uh, speech was mostly based on change, right? Then if we see in a broader way that since feminism has started in 1848, Europe revolution, now let's go back to the history and why did this start. First, let me say that women were refrained from enjoying different kinds of rights. Now, it is proven fact, and it is a scientific fact that has been seen that women are not at par physically with the men. The working conditions, if you say a plot and you have to work it like mines, like my DLO gave the example of, there the working capacity of woman is lesser than the man because physically woman is slightly incapable of the man. Why? Because of the biological thing which goes on in their body, and women do needs a lot of rest more than the man. And that is why here the feminism things comes up with enjoying equal rights, right to vote, right to work, and right that is freedom of speech. And also in this way there's a great chance of the men to prove themselves to be the deserving for the job. And in this way, if you become more skillful, then the society will be in the better position. We need development after all. And if you are very much skillful and there is competition of doing the job and to be done in a better way, then I believe that it is the better position of the society is with the better jobs, and we can have a promising development in that way. Also, DLO said, like my DLO said, feminism should include cultural and social norms as it helps in promoting all kinds of genders of women in the LGBTQ plus society and make the world in a better place to live in. You might be thinking that we are dismantling systematic barriers in this way, but yes, We are just not addressing the fact that we need to shift our focus in dismantling. Yes, there are some systematic barriers, but we are talking about the specific sum where we are directly showing the pros and cons of the both, and that is why I will say that we are winning this debate, whereas the government was very much hazy with its own definitions, and they were knifing it themselves. The government whip also said about equal pay and education equity. Like, you drew our attention to the history, but I'm not going to repeat my speech once again. I have already talked about the history point. And again, the question rises that how does this come from? And yes, individual empowerment is required. Even in your speech, you again knifed yourself by saying that individual empowerment is necessary. See, if you are not standing for yourself and you are not addressing your issues, then how are you going to help? And in this era, today's status quo, there has been seen that there is a gender, there are protests of gender equality, there is empowerment, there is awareness, but still in smaller cases and where the people are undereducated or illiterate, they have to face a lot of gender inequality. We need to talk about that. And dismantling it won't simply help if you are talking about a group. Individuality comes in here, because I would say that you need to take stand for yourself. You need to understand. Now let me talk about how individual empowerment still matters. Like, suppose you need to go to the grassroots level for mentorship programs to understand that why the empowerment of the feminism amongst the individuals are getting neglected. Then you need to address the biases, that if I'm facing some biases in some of the cases, then I need to address them in a better way, in a very rooted way, and being conscious. And wait, my network is not. Are you guys audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Please continue.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you. And yeah, and complementing systematic change. See, focusing solely on the large scale can be slowed down, because addressing individual issues and promoting female roles in the feminism is relevant to engaging in the broader audience. If a person, if a single person is getting engaged in herself towards the society work, and we are seeing in a broader spectrum कि जो, oh, that woman is working in that way, so we will be like कि जो, yeah, that person is working. And that is how the individual woman is able to spread awareness and empowerment to the other people. Time's up, I guess. Yeah.
Ah, cool. Calling upon said opposition again to provide the reply.
So the PM will be going for the reply, and I'll be starting in a self count of one, two, three. Yeah. So, first, let me again break the case of the opposition. The opposition, for all the time, just is busy highlighting why we need to actually shift the focus to dismantling systemic um, biases or systemic reforms. But the opposition at the same time fails to understand that, the government at the same time fails to understand that what does the opposition mean by dismantling systemic barriers. Now, when the when the opposition stands by systemic barriers, it doesn't. It nowhere mentions that they are against it. It always says that the government needs to understand that all the systemic barriers cannot actually be dismantled, to which the government does not answer. This claim of the opposition is left unanswered, that what about the certain systemic barriers that have been existing due to some reasons. And that is where the opposition actually wins the debate. I'll tell you why do we take the debate so clearly, because we as opposition don't talk in air about just dismantling it. We say that yes, there are some systemic barriers that they need to fight for, they need to dismantle it, but we even understand that some systemic barriers are for a cause. And we as opposition do understand the depth of what and how feminism works, including why we understand why systemic barriers at first place was introduced in the society way back in history. We understand what is better for our stakeholders, which is male biological males and females. We understand uh, why feminism should not entirely or must not entirely shift their focus onto dismantling systemic barriers, because that would lead them to lack something for which they are known for, that is empowering females. We need to understand how normal human psychology works. Actually, the government needs to understand. Till the time you don't have challenges, you don't actually fight for it. Today, why are females leading the world? That is because they were posed by many challenges. They had the fire to fight those challenges. And this is where the government is lacking. Still now, the mentality of the world is not yet based on accepting facts, realities into the picture, understanding the difference, the biological difference between male and female. We always say that they both cannot do the same work. We say that yes, they can do the same work, but at times male would have some factors that wouldn't make them as efficient as women, and women would have the same factors that wouldn't make them as efficient as man. A, the way in which a woman can tackle, you say, worldly things, especially the things that require patience and care, is not the same way a man can tackle it. We need to understand this. The government needs to understand that the entire case of the opposition is based on reality and understanding the factors that really influence an individual's life. And these individuals are no one but our stakeholders, which are somewhere mentally more suited in our paradigm of world, which are somewhere um, um, like motivationally more like suited, and they are more happy in our paradigm of the world, and that's why we take the debate with a clear margin. Thank you.
The dry speech will be by.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll be starting in three, two, one. So here, the panel, we government clearly takes the debate by analyzing and mentioning few points here. So, firstly, we want to summarize ourselves by saying that ki we never said that ki the way the differentiation between two genders or the problems or the lack of biological factors or physical factors between two genders are a problem are a problem facing at present now. We are simply making you realize that what is the core issue, what is the underlying problem, what is the main factor these movements, these feminist movements or these modern feminist movements are led for, just for the sake of true gender equality. Just read the motion again. And what is the purpose of these movements and these all these historical context and notions are to achieve that phases of true gender equality or gender equality basically. So when I say that we had proposed that how can we achieve this true gender equality. Our aim is to achieve that true gender equality, not basically to fight between us, to have to create a problem of that, to create a problem among us, and by decreasing each other by those physical or biological factors. We also as a government know, and we are also aware of factual of that data, which do concludes that ki there lies a differences, there lies some sort of differences between the genders. But we also, but what is the conclusion for it, what is the purpose of this movement? We are saying that ki to stand above those differences, to stand above those differences and meet each other, hug each other, and stand to stand above those differences and be at the same pace. We all to accept those differences. We had proposed that ki the modern feminism movement is way more different that those past feminist movement which those early contexts had. this modern feminism movement includes gender, race, and sexuality. And when it includes gender, race, sexuality, it needs to be dealt with those system. It needs to be dealt with those fighting those systemic barriers. Those systemic barriers are the main cause or are the core issue for these gender, race, and sexuality differences. How it is and how it is systemic barriers includes, as I said in my PM speech, those race caste thing, those disparities in the field of education and health thing, rigid social expectation with the society, with this society which the people around us do expect from the each gender around them, the underrepresentation in politics. Okay, and when the gov came, op came and blamed it all on the government side, ki, why are you not bringing change, why are you not like bringing those policies or reforms? You need to understand that these systemic barriers are mainly from those patriarchy thing, those customs or those earlier historical context thing. These are underlying issues which are ongoing, which are from those historical context, through those customs or those challenges, or through those customs, or basically through those historical events. These are not by the these are not the actions or proposal we government proposed in this present world, or we government officially imposed on this present world or present people. These are the underlying issues, but we are just we as a government side just want to we just want to propose that ki, through fighting these systemic barriers, I once again repeat that through fighting these systemic barriers, the feminist movement, the modern feminist movement, have a slightly way better chance, have slightly more satisfactory chance to achieve the main goal, not to dilute from the goal purpose, or like create more differences physically, biologically among us. You have to achieve the main fucking goal, that is true gender equality among us. And that can only not okay, if do you can you came and say that only few of the systemic barriers can be dealt by, or like not all of them. But I had as I had mentioned the questions in the, okay, so thank you.
Well, I believe that concludes the debate. Please give us a maximum of 10 minutes. The panel as a whole will be back within that time. I urge the panelists to move on to the Discord Telegram room. Thank you.
It was nice to debate with you guys. Thank you.
Cool. I'll take a quick roll call. Is Kav here? Anyone from Kav is up here?
The op is here.
Cool. Wait, where is Kav though? So we are ready with our call. Wait, proper messaging is cool.
Hello. Am
Yeah.
I
Wait,
audible?
wait, wait. I'm just ensuring that everyone is here. Is everyone here? Kav, are you here? भाई confirm कर दो. Are you guys here? Okay, I see them on the meet, so I'm going to assume they're here. With that being said, the panel is ready with their call. The motion falls on the side cuff with a 2:1 split. The dissentee Sarthak will give their OA first. Yeah, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but just making sure if the panel has filled the ballot.
Uh, I think both of us have sent our speakers codes to the chair and they'll fill it.
Okay. Just making sure there's no other panel while you're giving your OA.
Yeah, sure. I think the other panelists are gone. I can begin with my OA. Um, I hope I'm perfectly audible. Hello.
Yes, you are.
Uh, yeah, so I'll be starting on this. I'll count off three, two, and one. So before, like, before I would like to tell you how I'll be structuring my OA. First, I'll be going over the themes of the debate, and then just delving into a bit of personal feedback. And before all that, I'll be giving you the verdict. Verdict, as the chair said, uh, I was the dissentee, and according to me, the motion falls and all takes the case. But before that, into going into any analysis, I would like to just go into a deep analysis of the motion. Right, the motion was this house believes that modern feminism must shift focus to dismantling systematic barriers to achieve true gender equality. So, in the scope of this debate, the main focus essentially becomes achieving true gender equality, especially by the MEG given by the government of both the sides. So, any argument that essentially focuses more deeply on achieving true gender equality automatically holds more credence over any other arguments given so far in the debate. I think throughout the debate, one thing was rather commendable: the mechanization given by both the sides of the house. Uh, Nowhere in the debate I felt like the mechanization was subpar or lacking, but I think at some parts the mechanization essentially went, and take this as just a little bit of personal feedback, essentially went a bit too far, that instead of delving into the debate, it essentially increased the scope of the entire debate to a degree that was like much beyond, and was essentially not really scalable for either of the team to essentially build a case that encompasses all of that, right? When side Gov on one hand essentially tackled a case that was built around battling the impacts of the movement, right? The side op essentially tackled issues based more on how feminism works, the very nature of feminism, and all of that. And that essentially, I mean, it can work in a debate like this, but that scope becomes too broad and essentially becomes a bit tougher to tackle, right? So for me in the debate, the victory was essentially by a very slight margin, which is essentially, I think, because of my own personal call. But before all that, let's get into the themes of the debate, right? The first theme of the debate essentially becomes what? The impact of the feminist movement. So when we talk about the feminist movement, we all have a basic idea of how the movement works, how it started, and how the modern nature of the movement is like, right? So when we talk about the impact of the movement, in the scope of the debate, the main impact essentially can be understood as achieving gender equality. Both the sides give me a case on this and give me enough mech to make it down on my ad sheet as well. Gov side gives me a case in which they talk about how systematic change and tackling the systematic barriers is essentially a way to achieve this goal, right? That even anything commendable the feminist movement has so far ever achieved is because of this systematic change, rather than having a much more scoped view or anything. All right, noted. So the op essentially comes up to me and gives me a case about how modern feminism is essentially non-functioning in a way, and gives me examples about how women are essentially all right. The nature of women are essentially changing, and how the modern movement doesn't really create as much of an impact as saying by specifically tackling systematic issues, right? So when we talk about simply the impact, there is no direct engagement by side op. Instead they delve into the next theme of the debate, which so impact of the movement I had to give to gov side. But coming on to the next theme of the debate, that is the functioning of feminism movement itself, how the movement functions, right? A movement doesn't really function by simply just say, the movement isn't just all about what it achieves, right? You can't judge a car by just how fast it runs. You have to also look at how it functions, right? So the functioning of the feminist movement itself, this is again given to me by side op, about how, like, tackling systematic changes and all, this is a rather time consuming process, right? It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort. And another major part that is essentially becomes a turning point in this debate is how the main goal of feminism is to give them self dependency, but it shifts to breaking these systematic barriers. The opside also gives me a case and mechanization on how this will become. This ties into, like, how the modern feminist movement essentially has a lot of supporters that don't really know what the movement essentially works for. So this can work negatively so as to break the entire system that is in question, right? So when we talk about the functioning of the movement, it's only logical that if my focus is shifted or at least diversified, obviously the movement is going to be affected by it, right? Side gov essentially what it does is, in the previous class that we were talking about the impact of the movement, side gov, instead of engaging directly with this claim that the functioning will not be affected, how will the functioning of the movement be uh, slowed down or even fastened, I think just a bit of personal feedback is, if you already, like, by the second or third speech, it was clearly understood that the impact the side gov has on the feminist movement essentially held more credence on the offside. What side gov essentially delved into was to double down on the impact side of the things, which essentially works in their favor, but it only works in them in one dimension, right? On the dimension of the impact, but the dimension of functioning is not really tackled directly. So that clash also I had to give to the side op. So far so forth. One class was given to side gov, and one class was given to side op. The only determining factor of this debate essentially becomes the solution to the systematic issues, right? So going back to the essential motion of the debate, right? uh, it didn't really say anything about systematic barriers that exist, but, like, it didn't put any uh, affirmation to tackle those things as well. But since the debate went on the path that it decided to, this essentially became a very important factor to determine the outcome of this particular debate. Solutions to these systematic issues. Both the sides give me enough mech on what these systematic barriers are like, right? We talk about unequal distribution of resources, we talk about discrimination, we could talk about sexism, we talk about gender pay gap. Fair enough, right? These systematic issues exist, and they are essentially, what do you call that, a main target for the feminist movement in older times as well as the present times to tackle, right? But when we talk about the solutions, essentially there is no actual engagement or mech as to how these things will be tackled. When we talk about side gov's case, right? Sure, there is enough mech and enough examples on how the movement is essentially going to be impacted, how the feminist movement is essentially going to be talked about, and what all it achieves. But that again is a very say that is in a very feminist scope of how it helps women. But about the systematic issues like racism and casteism, there is no real example on how the feminist movement can tackle that and it helps their own cause, right? Only by saying that, okay, we should also work on breaking systematic barriers is not really enough. The only real importance given is that we need to focus on it because gender equality efforts are essentially null and void on their own, which is not essentially a very strong argument to give. compared to side op, which essentially comes up to me and talks about diversifying their entire movement and how other movements exist essentially that can tackle this. Again, both the arguments are not really directly communicated to each other, right? One side is telling me that okay, other movements are already existing, and if we diversify ourselves, maybe we can help out ourselves a bit. But at the same time, somebody else is talking about how diversification is going to be hindering the flow of the feminist movement. But the main metric of this debate, of this particular clash, essentially becomes what? Two factors, right? One is issues that involve women directly, and the other issues that were in the question, right? These are two metrics. In op side of the case, like in both sides of the case, let's first talk about that. Women are essentially being helped, right? Either directly by the feminist movement or by alteration of the feminist movement, which focuses on systematic challenges as well. The only determining metric essentially becomes the other factors, right? Sex, racism, and casteism. In op side of the paradigm, at least there is some body that is essentially going to be tackling that, right? And there is some conversation about that. Inside Gov's case, there is essentially just a talk that okay, we can break them, but the only real mech is given on how to break down the barriers faced by women, especially them. But no, but only mentioning that we can also tackle these issues is not sufficient enough to me to buy that okay, the other issues are also going to be resolved in Gov side of the paradigm. If that was the case, the clash would have been symmetric, but only because of uh, like a certain lack of a multi-dimensional mechanization, I had to give it to side off. This was again a rather close call. And now going into a little bit of personal feedbacks. Uh, uh, just a second. Like for example, talking about Gov's case, right? Uh, First thing, again, this is a common feedback to both the sides. You have to give examples, but like giving one example is more than sufficient enough. Because of this, arguments that came up by the Gov side were saying that how widespread changes that happens are having proportionally more impact. This was kind of hinted out by summarizing what the previous speaker essentially said. You don't have to necessarily do that. Like doing that is honestly recommended, but you don't have to do it to a degree that your own points essentially get squandered. Same goes on with side op about how when they talk about that it's a time taking call, mechanization should be more focused on how is it time taking, or how is it getting essentially diversified, right? Sure, it is logical to assume that if my attention is diversified, I'll obviously be going slower, but a more mechanization of how it is a time taking call and how the intersectional approach essentially works. The only, again, coming back to the solutions theme, the only reason is because they give me a little bit of a better mechanism about having an intersectional approach. That's the only thing. They just essentially came up to me and told me about okay, we essentially have a mechanism to tackle the other issues as well. The Gov side did not and doubled down on their original claim. So that was the only deciding factor for this particular debate. MOM for the particular for this debate is not very large. The victory was by a rather slight margin. And all in all, this was a good debate to watch. But as this is just a piece of advice to both the teams. Don't broaden the scope of the debate to a degree that is like unfathomable by both the teams, right? It doesn't just handicap the other team. Sure, it's a good strat to build such a broad case that the other team can't engage with in the first place, but it also kind of handicaps your own ability. So yeah, that was for my OA. Any clarifications or questions or anything at all by side op or side gov?
From side Gov, it's clear, sir. No doubts or queries ahead.
All right, from side op.
It's all cool.
All right. Also, guys, you're supposed to fill in the ballots. I hope you guys know that before the OA starts. So, and also, thank you so much. Great debate.
One sec, I'll just let you know. Just give me 1 minute.
Or like just the chair?
All three have to fill the ballot.
Uh, so,
Uh, it reflected on the server. Thank you.
yeah, so I filled it for you guys.
Hi, Chinmay. Way of chair is left now, kind of
Yeah, yeah.
guess.
Cool.
It's still left.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, loud and clear.
Am I visible as well?
Yes.
Okay. Uh, Hello everyone, Ronit here. I was the panelist for this round. I shall be giving my OA in just a second. Let me keep a timer for myself. Starting my OA in three, two, one. So here's how I'll structure my OA. I'll give some general comments about what happened in the debate, what could have been better, and all of that. Then I give my verdict, which y'all already know, and then I give my justification and give a small clash by clash analysis. So first of all, some general comments about the debate. I think it was a pretty close debate, to be fair. Um, there was the characterization that was given by both sides. It was not very clear, it was weak. What do these systemic barriers actually look like? Like when you say that the systemic barriers include racial discrimination, caste-based discrimination, homophobia, all of that sort. You have to give a little bit more characterization of what these systemic barriers actually look like, rather than just using words and other fancy words. Give a little bit more analysis as to what these systemic barriers look like, why are they in place, what has happened, how do these affect, and all that sorts. Second thing, in the characterization, also give impacts of what these systemic barriers and uh, how they affect the status quo, and what is the problem with these systemic barriers, and how they're actually contributing to gender inequality. Then again, for side government, your burden is to prove that and show that how true gender equality can be achieved by actually dismantling these barriers. Here's what happened. They to some extent did fulfill that burden. However, side op didn't really fulfill that burden. Their burden is to show that to achieve true gender equality, dismantling of barriers is not important. You cannot come in and say that we'll dismantle some systemic barriers, and we won't dismantle the others because there are some reasons for which they exist, wherein you say that, okay, like for example, unequal pay exists because male and female bodies uh, are different. I mean, that is pretty unfair to cite government if you do that. So that shouldn't really happen. It's your burden to prove that, okay, uh, gender equality can be achieved without dismantling these barriers as well, or what is the most important approach that the modern feminist movement should actually follow to actually achieve the final goal, which is to achieve gender equality. Now again, what was another problem, in my opinion, of this debate was, so first, the verdict is that the motion stands, gov takes the debate. Another problem this debate, in my opinion, was that the stakeholder analysis was not very clear. When the government came in and in their first speech said that the stakeholders, the entire world, the op did not really clearly characterize the stakeholder. Again, Gov's characterization of the stakeholder being the entire world, but how it's impacting the stakeholders on a very specific level. That was not clear. I understood what you were trying to say, but again, in a debate as an edge, I cannot interfere or use my head. It's basically you have to give me a mechanization. You have to prove to me even the smallest, most nuanced details, which might seem obvious. Because I, as an edge, cannot use my brain. I'm an average newspaper reader who does not know anything in the debate. So what you tell me, I buy. But again, you have to give me reasoning so that I can buy what you're trying to say. Again, the government mechanization, not that clear. Now, here's what the main clashes were. The side government came in and said that okay, there are systemic barriers that exist in place in the form of racial discrimination, caste-based discrimination, and all of that sorts. To act the This is the main root of all the problems about gender inequality and all of that sorts. And the modern feminism's final goal is to achieve gender equality. So since this is the main root of the problems, we attack that. Now here's what side opposition tried to come in and say. They said that okay, they said that okay, modern they racial discrimination and all of that sorts, it's all interlinked to gender discrimination, and gender inequality is linked with all of these factors. And when society was not always patriarchal, it was matriarchal, then they give a very historical set of thing to actually set up their case. They also say that male and female bodies work differently, so uh, there are some sort of systemic barriers that exist, and they exist for a reason. They also say that okay, feminism is now taking a pseudo feminist approach wherein they're asking for things without actually knowing what the very nuances or understanding what they're asking for. Then they also their case is also about how actually focusing on dismantling the systemic barriers will take time and shift focus of the true goal of feminism, wherein okay, right now the feminism should uphold and you know uh, fight for women's rights and all of that sort. Now this is a point which is a good point. If it well it could have been a winning point in my opinion if it was characterized or mechanized to a very large extent. Matlab, to say that okay, you come in and say this, but you also have to go and mechanize it as to okay, how will it take time and shift focus of the current or modern or needs of feminism are, and why is it very important, and why this is more important uh, than dismantling the uh, systemic barriers that are in place. Then again, uh, what side government proved to me to some extent, I do not say that I buy the entire case, but again, they, what they proved to me was that in their paradigm, at least a delta positive is being created. However, because they proved to me that okay, to some extent the root cause of this is the systemic barriers that are in place. Because even the side opposition, when they say that okay, racial discrimination, everything is interlinked with gender inequality and everything, so to some extent it is the root cause of gender inequality, which is the systemic barriers that are in place. So attacking the systemic barriers is what is the most important. Again, the impacts that gov claims are very far-fetched, wherein they say that okay, now laws to promote gender equality will come in place. There's going to be it's going to be uh, while I buy that okay, it is important. While I buy that it is important for just a second, while I buy that it is important that okay, there needs to be institutional reform, you have to give me more mech as to for me to completely buy that okay, institutional reform is going to come in the first place. However, I gave this debate on the fact that there's a delta positive that is being created on side government, wherein they're going to, once you start fighting for this institutional reform, okay, fine, at least a small amount of positive is being created, because this is what is the root cause of gender inequality, and that was the tipping point of the debate, in my opinion. Uh, Thank you. Any questions first from side gov?
No question, sir.
Thank you. And any questions from side up?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi, it's Gav here. Hi, is Gav here?
Yeah.
Oh, it's up here.
Oh, sorry, I answered the wrong question. The opposite.
Okay, okay. I'm going to assume the curve is here as well. Okay, cool. So I will begin my OA in three, two, one. Hi, so this is how I'm going to structure my OA. I will give you my call, I will give general comments about the debate, and then I move on to clash by clash analysis. Cool. As you all know, the debate falls on side cuff. So, general comments. I feel the debate was an average to above average debate, which was a bit parallel in the beginning, but it eventually gets sorted out towards the end clip speeches, so that's an issue. I think both sides provide me with a similar level of analysis for the argument, which I do feel could have been done better. So mostly I've just this debate based on utilitarian metric, which looks like which side is able to provide me with more you know widespread impacts. And one more thing is responses are not accepted in reply speeches, so I did not credit them while evaluating my notes. Fourth point, I did find a certain bit of noise in the debate, which didn't amount to much due to the lack of analysis and engagement, and hence became a wash. And also, before I move on to my analysis, I think Op did a good job in framing, and I do feel that they deserve a certain degree of credit for that. So, moving on to clashes, I think major there was one major and one minor clash in this debate. I will start with the major clash being individuality versus systemic change, right, which is more important. So Gov tells me that they are going to petition for changes in the legislature. They're going to bring changes in the education and curricula, and as a result, it's going to lead more lasting impact no lasting impact. And in an ops response to this is that they tell me that there is a need for individuality considering the historical perspective of the feminist movement, right? That how it empowers women, right? That how it empowers women to fight against these challenges and then better themselves, right? And they also tell me that how there is a need for grassroots intervention, which they claim is absent or at least less present in the government and more prevalent in their op paradigm as well. Cool. So this clash falls on side Curve, and there are two reasons for that. Firstly, Curve has able Curve has been able to show that they're achieving more on their side, right? So when you are passing laws, creating lasting changes, s- creating passing laws and creating lasting changes, right? So here the ops main report was that it's the government job to be equitable, right? It's not the feminist movement who should be doing this stuff in the first place, which is a valid response, right? But it is, as an informed citizen, it is more reasonable for me to believe that despite it being the government's job to be more equitable, discrimination in laws still do exist in the status quo, right? And it has always existed considering the historical perspective, right? And changes are only made when you put pressure on the government to listen to your demand and actually enact them, right? And this pressure is coming from the Gov's paradigm when you're making it your core focus to overhaul the systemic changes, and thus more prevalent in Govs rather than op. Cool. Secondly, furthermore, they're also able to successfully co-opt the grassroots claim of op, right? Albeit with a different mag, which is when you're promoting better legislative changes through gendered education curricula, you're also addressing the bias from these very grassroots levels, right? So although this grassroots level is a bit different from what op is claiming it to be, considering they do, as it moves on in the long run, since they achieve a more pragmatic change, I'm able to give this clash to side count. So, with that concluding the major clash, I will come into the last and minor clash of this debate, right, which is inclusivity. I think Gov has been, like I said earlier, the Gov has been able to adequately show that how systemic changes creates more opt-in benefits into the movement, because they have been able to mechanize that how these discrimination and disadvantage exist due to the underlying cause in these laws, right, which discriminate against women or certain gender minority or racial minority as well, right? I think the ops major response to this was that these actions and communities already exist in the movement, which I again have bought into. But you could have done a better job of showing me that how you're benefiting them in your paradigm, right? That how your paradigm is able to provide better benefits than what Curve is able to do. So, right? And had you done so, you could have very well taken the clash. So due to this minor insufficiency in argumentation, the clash falls on side curve, and hence they are able to take the utility of all these impacts of inclusivity and more social justice and outreach. As a result, they're able to seal the debate. I think that concludes my OA. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I will take side op first. Side op, do you have any question? Okay, assuming that.
Excuse me.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Thank you for the speech. That was fine. Can you give some, specifications about the topics that we said by role analysis, like what the we said and all about the personal feedbacks?
Okay, you need personal feedback. Okay,
Yep.
wait, you need here. I'll give it to you. Fine, sure. Let me open my notes. Book one Excel. So DPM. Okay, yeah. So you're LO, right? Sorry, you're op. Good.
Yeah, op web.
So I think there was a certain bit of I think I mentioned in my general comments in your whole op case there was a bit of bits and pieces of floating information which you could have acted upon but you did not, and also bits and pieces of information which are a bit contradictory, but since you didn't actually analyze them, I didn't find it contradictory enough. I think an example of this, I think Hello does a fair job of rebutting, like calling out the mech from PM, which I think was pretty good. I think what you could have done is you could have shown me that how the stakeholders, how the stakeholders at this binary gender you are including them, how they could have been better in your paradigm, right? And further, you may also tell me that not all barrier needs to be addressed. I think you could have done a better job. I'm speaking in terms of hello. I'm going from the first. I think you could have better job of telling me that what you could have specified what barriers you're looking for, right? Because I could not credit this in my, while I was evaluating this. It was empty, right? Like, sure, all barriers need not to be addressed, but what happens? Like, what barriers do you not need to address, and what happens as a result of that? Coming to DLO, I think you talk a lot about biological factor, right? That shifting these barriers will take time, like and but what you did not do, could have told me why is this bad, right? Why this propensity of change being high, being low is a bad thing, considering considering the Cubs paradigm, where they are at least achieving some change, even though if it is in the long run. I think had you done so, you could have taken the first clash in your side. I think, and there were further more like okay, other messages.
Yeah, can you please
Let me try.
confirm us that
Quickly.
who won, like the gov or the op?
The cup one, right? It
Okay,
was a
okay,
split.
thank you.
So me and yeah, cool. So that's it. Do you still want me to continue with the feedback? Okay, I'll finish the hello feedback as it is started. But Chavini of that. Cool, yeah. So you're telling me that how they intersect with other issues and stuff. Again, there was a severe lack of analysis. Since you do not have analysis, you could have won on the impact, but this impact were more on Cuff side. As a result, I handed the debate to Cuff. Good. With that being said, we'll move on to side now if you have any doubts regarding the way, of course.
So we
Oh,
have no doubt. Thank
oh,
you for the OA. Start.
okay. Thank you. Good debate, guys. All the best for the next rounds. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Uh, Quick reminder to fill in the feedback before leaving the meet.
Yes, ma'am. We'll be ensuring that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.